What are we going to do as civilized human beings the next time there is a large-scale terrorist attack? What are we going to do? I remember the terrible shock that accompanied 9/11. And to me, it was a little bit more personal than it might have been to most people in the world, because at the time I was working at a very small airport in eastern Canada, and when the entire U.S. commercial fleet was grounded, well, this little tiny airport that I worked in got overwhelmed by grounded flights from all over the world that were all heading to the U.S. or were heading to points inside of the U.S. There was a terrible shock. And we didn't quite know what to make of it all. Although, to be honest, it did bring out a lot of good in us, because a lot of people in the small city that I lived in opened their homes to the people that were grounded and let them stay there, and generally tried to make them as comfortable as possible. But all the hospitality and feel-good stories that you can imagine couldn't really put that terrible sense of shock out of everyone's mind, that we simply weren't prepared for this. And there was a great deal of extreme malaise caused by this attack, where people just didn't know what to do about it. There were a lot of people who were calling for drastic action, a lot of people who essentially went to pieces over the whole thing because they thought that this is the beginning of the end. As it turns out, it was a terrible thing to have happened, but the world seems to have at least partially recovered and stabilized itself after 9/11. And I think that we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to, I suppose, to the people that died on 9/11, to sort of draw the correct lessons from what happened then. We cannot allow this kind of thing to shock us again. We can't allow the angry voices, the terrified voices, the voices of panic and despair, to take hold of us next time that this happens. It's going to happen. Everything that I can imagine seems to say that, yes, there's going to be another horrible disaster on the scale of 9/11. Technology is advancing rapidly to the point where it won't be that long before we have plenty of people throughout the world who are sort of below the radar of the world's intelligence services have the means to carry out a terrible attack upon a civilian target and perhaps kill millions of people, maybe? What are we going to do when that happens? I don't want to bring this up as a scare issue. I don't want to sort of say that we should, prepare and go into survivalist mode, or decide that we're going to retaliate and obliterate the people that we decide are responsible for this. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, how do we as a civilization maintain the essence of civilization when this does happen? How do we maintain our humanity the next time we get a terrible shock like we got at 9/11? That's not going to be the easiest thing to do, but it has historical precedence. The people of Great Britain during the Second World War come to mind. If anything, they were visited with calamities that actually were worse than New York City was subjected to during 9/11. And if anything, it made them more civilized, because they saw the potential for what eventually befell them. They understood that that was the risk that they were running in fighting Nazi Germany, and they accepted it. They understood that this could happen, so when it did happen, civilization did not disintegrate the way that a lot of people said that it might. Now, I'm not saying that things are as clear-cut this time. The next time there's a terrorist attack, it might be from some group that is very nebulous and its aims are unclear, and there won't be a clear enemy the way there was in the Second World War. But in any case, we will still have a model to look back on, how a society kept its humanity even under the most atrocious circumstances. Whatever people think of Israel right now, Israel is in a somewhat similar situation. I don't want to get into the rights and wrongs of the Middle East, but say what you like about Israel. Israel is still a civil society. It's an open society where you can say what you like, you can criticize your leaders, and you can live as a free person. Even though it is under, in many ways, it's enduring a state of siege. Again, I don't want to comment on the rights and wrongs of the situation, but I will say that it is possible for a society to stay human, even under the most trying circumstances. So how are we going to retain our humanity after we see one morning on the news that someone has detonated a nuclear device in Manchester, England, or someone has pumped a huge dose of bubonic plague into the New York City subway system, or someone has somehow dispersed a huge cloud of chemical gas over greater Beijing or Mecca or something like this. When we get really scared and we go, oh, it's really hit the fan this time. What are we going to do? How do we as civilized people plan to deal with this next time? Because it's going to happen. The logic of science demands that it's going to happen. As I said, the means of mass destruction are becoming more and more democratic, shall we say. It won't be that long before somebody is able to build a nuclear bomb without anyone else noticing that this kind of research is taking place. Maybe not in my lifetime, but it will eventually happen. What are we going to do then? I think that it behooves us, if we believe in the survivability of human decency and civilization, to think along these lines. That way, when the equivalent of the Junkers bombers start to rain their death upon our city, our London, like what happened in 1940, we can react the way the Londoners did, and just sort of say, okay, this is something bad that has befallen us, but we can deal with it. Thank you.